Hey everybody, it is late at night and I am Norman. If you're a regular viewer of this channel, you know that I own an Everest, and that has been a source of pain ever since I got it. I've done plenty of videos discussing it, so I'll just recap briefly here in case you haven't seen those. The clasp that they originally shipped on does not have a fold-over safety clasp on it, it's just a friction fit clasp. And when I purchased this watch, I had heard rumblings of people complaining about this clasp, but I thought that it was just people irritated that it didn't have that safety fold over. I had no idea that the clasp actually just pops open even when you're doing mundane nothing tasks like sitting down on a couch. That happened to me within minutes of putting the watch on when I first received it. And even after I had a watchmaker tighten that up so that it doesn't pop open all the time, it still happens every now and then, just not nearly as often. So when it happened again just a couple weeks ago, I was over it. It was time to start looking around for other Explorer homages that might be able to replace this. I have no idea where I found it, because if you go through lists of Explorer alternatives, it never showed up on any of them. But I did find that Tisell makes a 36mm Explorer Homage, and I picked one up. Tonight we're going to review this watch and see if it's any good. So let us begin. Alright, so this is what the Tisell shipped in. Kind of an interesting box here. Let's get it out of this sleeve. Oops, some order information. And look at that box. I have not seen its like before. I have Tisell on there. It snaps shut. Here we've got a card. Style for you. Here we have the booklet. Not a whole lot of info in here. That's fine. It came on a nice squishy pillow. Oh, and look, we have some extra links. And here is the watch itself. The biggest concern I had when I purchased this was this bracelet, because I believe that the Explorer aesthetic loses its magic if you take it off the bracelet. I'm also kind of picky because I like this oyster style bracelet more than the Jubilee, which is what the Everest is currently shipping on. So I was relieved to find out that this is actually a decent bracelet, especially for the price of this watch. And another key factor is the tapering, because this is a 36mm watch with 20mm lugs. It really needs to taper, otherwise this bracelet just kind of overpowers the watch. And the taper on this is really good. I think it more closely matches the Explorer's taper than the Everest does. It's very subtle, but if you see the two side by side, and I will do a video of just that, this one seems to taper sooner, and it just looks better on the watch. And the thing that I was most excited about, this has a tool-free micro adjustment mechanism, wink wink. We all know what name that goes by, but you can just pop this down and slide it in or out. And I lucked out with this watch because before I bought it, I watched reviews, and I was super stoked to see that David Schwartz did a review of the 39mm version of this. Awesome. But there were some people who had really stiff, difficult to use micro adjustment mechanisms. But this one is pretty smooth. Snap it back down. And there we go. And look at that. Oh, so nice. The safety fold over there. What a relief. I do have to say, this clasp is very large compared to what I'm used to with the Everest. And it kind of sticks out this way a bit, as you'll see in the wrist shots. But I think that's just a matter of me having to get used to a different clasp. That'll be a running theme, the whole idea of getting used to something, as you'll find out. We'll open this up so we can look at the case back. It's brushed in the center and we have some polishing around that, which is kind of cool. I prefer that over having a totally polished case back, especially if it's a watch on a bracelet, because that bracelet will tend to scratch up the case back. I'm really weird, and watches like this with bracelets or Milanese straps, I generally set down on its side so that the bracelet basically never touches there. So weird because you can never really see that anyway when you're wearing it, but yeah, I'm totally normal. And this has the kind of case back that unscrews, but it has a coin edge, not the usual notches. So I believe you can't really use a standard case back opener for this, which is fine. While this was inexpensive, it was expensive enough that I don't really want to touch it, and I want to have it waterproof tested if I do have somebody open it. And it's mechanical, so I really have no business getting back there myself. I will pay an expert to do so. One thing about this watch that does make me a little sad is it doesn't have drilled lugs. But that's totally fine because I'm probably not going to be taking this thing off. We'll see, maybe in the future I'll decide to try a few different looks with this thing, a few different straps and whatnot, but I don't see that happening anytime soon, that's for sure. But back to the bracelet, you'll see that it's brushed. The only polish is on the edges here, and unlike the Everest, this does not have rivets on the side of the bracelet, which I'm cool with either way. I actually never really noticed them so much on the Everest. I thought that they might bother me, but in person and when it's on the wrist, they were subtle enough to where it was like they weren't even there. So when I put this one on, not much different. It has a screwed down crown, so let's unscrew that and see how it does. Pops out cleanly. Feels really good when you're winding it. Let's pop it out and try setting the time. This movement hacks, so our second hand is stopped there. And there's a nice amount of resistance as you're setting it, so that's pretty cool. Pop this back in. There goes our seconds hand. Now, let's see how well it screws in. Ooh, not bad at all. It catches easily. Not bad for this price point. That's cool. Looking at the side of the watch, you can see that it's not terribly thick. On paper, it sounds a little thick because I'm used to dressier pieces or vintage watches, but not bad at all. That polishing looks really good, and it has the cool Explorer-y rounded sides there. The bezel's cool, it angles up nicely, and we see that the case is brushed except for the sides and the bezel. And check out that dial. So unlike the Everest, which is modeled after a vintage Explorer and did not have applied indices and used a totally different font, this one has the applied ones that we see in Explorers today, and they're framed by chromed metal in there. Obviously not white gold like an Explorer, but that loom is really crisp, really white. I love that seconds hand. With the little dot on the counterweight and the lollipop there. That's cool. It's gonna take me a little while to get used to this dial though. I'm used to the Everest, where the indices are a lot smaller, the triangle is smaller, and the dial in general looks smaller, I think because of the box crystal. This one, as you can see, has a flat crystal with sort of a beveled edge there, and it looks pretty cool. And don't get me wrong, I do like that dial. It's just kind of a shock because it seems so different than the Everest. And the indices just look gigantic to me. But I feel like the more I wear this, the more that'll kind of look normal to me. As you can see, we have some Loom here. So let's charge that up and go someplace dark and see how it performs. Ooh, check that out. This is the first time I've really seen this loom, and look at how blue that is. That is super cool. And there's a decent amount of it on the indices, and look at how it reflects off the crystal and the rehaut. That's pretty cool. Yes, I like it. Wow. Yeah, I had no idea it was going to be that color. That is cool. As for the specifications on this watch, this is the Tisell 9015 Explorer. I paid just about $300 for this, all things said and done. The case size is 36 millimeters. The case height is 11.5 millimeters. The lug to lug is 43.5 millimeters. The lug width is 20 millimeters. The case is 316L stainless steel. The crystal is sapphire. The loom that's on this is Super Luminova BGW9. The movement inside this watch is a Miyota 90S5. And these movements are considered their premium automatics, and they're actually used in brands like Korono Tokyo. That's pretty impressive. And this watch has 100 meters of water resistance. Alright, so let me take off my latest Watches of Remembrance watch. This is another piece with sapphire on it. And look at those syringe hands. I'll have to share these most recent pieces that I've gotten from Mr. D in a future video. But yeah, let's take this off and we'll see what the Tisell looks like when it's on the wrist. Here is the Tisell 36mm Explorer Homage on my 7-inch wrist. And they absolutely nailed the aesthetic. You can kind of see how that clasp sticks down a bit. I think it's just that it's so long. The clasp on the Everest is like half this length, so I'm kind of getting used to this one still. But with the fold over and the micro adjustment mechanism, yeah, this thing is awesome. That's exactly what I wanted for the Everest. So cool. And just look at how sharp that dial is. It looks pretty thin on the wrist, doesn't stand up too tall. That is so cool. And I am not at all a bracelet person, but with the Explorer, I absolutely love it. So there you have it, my brand new Tisell Explorer Homage. And it's actually better than I thought it would be. This bracelet is decent, which is good, because I'm probably never going to take it off. Like I said, that is kind of part of the magic of the Explorer. However, I had no idea how odd a more contemporary Explorer dial would look to me. Now that I've had the Everest for so long, we'll see if I get used to this. So far I'm thinking I may end up being stuck with both of them, because I like the two different designs. And I don't know if I could just boil it down to one of them. Thanks for watching.